And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan, and this is your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Monday, September 8th, 2025. Jumping into things for Tuesday morning, we have a strong area of low pressure that is passed just south of the central and eastern Aleutians, and it'll be located just south of the Alaska Peninsula by Tuesday morning. It's going to take a track up along to the east side of Kodiak Island on Wednesday, and then eventually just sit and spin over the western Gulf for the rest of the week. So this low has initially some gale force winds, storm force gust. It will weaken a bit, but the front is still strong as it lifts to the north and northeast. So I do expect, at the very least, gale force winds associated with that front as it lifts northeastward Tuesday into Wednesday. And eventually, some moderate to locally heavy rain will spread all the way eastward into the Panhandle starting early Wednesday morning, and then you'll really note it Wednesday into Thursday. And as it comes up through places like the entrance of Cook Inlet, higher elevations, the Katmai region there are going to be some strong east-southeast winds along and ahead of that particular front. Starting out Tuesday morning, though, IFR conditions along and just east of Kodiak Island, south side, North Pacific side of the Alaska Peninsula. Rather widespread IFR conditions, lower Yukon coast, Bristol Bay coastline up to St. Lawrence Island, and then also up here in the eastern North Slope, eastern Brooks Range. And for Tuesday afternoon, as the front continues its way northeastward, we're going to find IFR conditions along that with areas of rain and wind. And we have IFR conditions along the west arm of the Alaska Range due to that east-southeasterly flow, upslope flow. Same thing along the eastern Kenai Peninsula, pockets of IFR extending eastward all the way into the northern Panhandle, but more notably out over the southwestern Gulf. And for Wednesday morning, with the low sitting in this area, the front butting up along the Gulf Coast, we have areas of moderate to locally heavy rain, enhanced by the lift there of the coastal mountains when the winds go up along that. So we're going to have areas of rain, lower ceilings, gusty winds Wednesday morning pushing up into the Panhandle, especially along the outer coastline there of the northeast Gulf Coast and outer Panhandle. Meanwhile, IFR conditions along the north slope, spine of the Brooks Range, Beaufort Sea coast. As some of that moisture comes north, it's also going to encounter the colder air over the north slope region, and that's going to create lower ceilings with periods of accumulating snow, especially Wednesday afternoon through early Friday morning. So anyone attempting to fly and travel through this region, be wary because this system is going to put down some snow, especially if you're hunting or working in that area. Back to the west, we have IFR conditions, lower Bering Sea in the western half of the Aleutians for Wednesday afternoon. Low sitting out in this region of the western southwest Gulf with the front just kind of draped in, trying to push northward across inland from the Gulf Coast and Panhandle. IFR conditions expected along the outer Gulf Coast, northern Panhandle, back through the intercoastal mountains of the northern Gulf Coast and the eastern Kenai. Still IFR conditions along the west arm of the Alaska Range, especially from Rainy Pass down through Lake Clark Merrill. And as we look to the passes here in the east central Brooks Range, Anatuvik Pass, including Adigan Pass, IFR conditions there on Tuesday. And conditions will further deteriorate as a result of that snow breaking out, especially Wednesday into Thursday. Lake Clark and Merrill, MVFR early Tuesday becoming IFR. Same thing, Rainy Pass, MVFR conditions becoming IFR. You have those east-southeast winds ahead of the front with moisture in the form of rain, run into snow, higher elevations, and then windy. Pass IFR becoming MVFR, kind of more, I think, because of the wind shift, not more of an easterly, northeasterly component, not allowing to flow upward through the pass. And then Isabel Pass, VFR, MVFR conditions there on Tuesday. Further east, drier air. Mentasta Pass should hold on to VFR conditions. Tanita Pass starting out VFR early Tuesday, giving way to MVFR conditions. And then Portage Pass, initially MVFR, but you're going to see the IFR conditions pull in off of Prince William Sound and up through the east entrance there as you go through Tuesday. And then finally in the northern Panhandle at Chilkoot and White, look for MVFR conditions early Tuesday, giving way to IFR conditions. And on the freezing level map at the surface, we find temperatures Tuesday morning below freezing up across eastern Russia. and then dipping down past the south slopes here of the Brooks Range and all of the North Slope. So there's the colder air sitting there, and as that moisture rides north, that's what's going to help create the period of accumulating snow, especially later Wednesday through Thursday and lingering early Friday morning. Meanwhile, to the south, here's the main low sitting just south of the Alaska Peninsula. And by Wednesday, that low is going to move up along and just to the east of Kodiak Island. Ahead of it, so we have this occluded front. Ahead of that front, freezing levels aloft rise to 8, 10, even 12,000 feet down here in the North Pacific. But it's along this boundary. We're going to have areas of moderate to locally heavy rain that extend and will be pushed north and eastward along the Gulf Coast, especially into the Panhandle, Yakutat, down along the outer coast of the Panhandle by Wednesday. So here's how the icing potential looks on Tuesday. This will be through Tuesday afternoon. In the areas of the lower Gulf, freezing levels aloft are 12 and 14,000 feet along the Gulf Coast. There could be moderate icing above 10,000 feet. And then back toward the upper level low center out over Bristol Bay, northern part of the Alaska Peninsula above 8,000 feet. Also above 8,000 feet, there could be moderate icing, especially along and just northwest of the Alaska Range. And then that pocket up there and through the central part of the Brooks Range and central part of the North Slope above 4,000 feet. Here are the upper level 30,000 foot jet stream level winds. Clearly, here's the low circulation centered over the central part of the Alaska Peninsula with the strongest winds out south of the Gulf in the North Pacific, 85 to 95 knots. We also have further north a band, a little jet core, 95 knot winds out over the south slopes of the Brooks Range. At 9,000 feet or 700 millibars, clearly a very well-defined low-pressure circulation along and just south of the central Alaska Peninsula, with a broad area of 50 to even 60 knot winds just south of the Gulf down through the North Pacific, which is part of the southeast quadrant of this low. On the backside of the low, we have winds to 55 knots cutting across the eastern Aleutians lower tip there of the Alaska Peninsula. More importantly, at 3,000 feet, you can see the low circulation here just south of the Alaska Peninsula, southwest of Kodiak Island. And along this broad belt of winds, 40 to locally 50 and even 60 knots, we have here into Lower Cook Inlet, Kamishak Bay, and then rising up to the higher terrain that extends down there along the west arm of the Alaska Range and the Katmai region. This is where you could have some severe turbulence, also some pretty strong winds sitting outside of the eastern Kenai coast and Hinchinbrook entrance. And then on the backside, we also have some strong winds just 3,000 feet aloft here across the eastern Aleutians, 50, 55 knots. So I would expect on Tuesday, broad area of moderate turbulence from the northern Gulf Coast there, around Prince William Sound, Cape Suckling, down through the Kenai Peninsula, and also back here through the eastern Aleutians up until the tip of the Alaska Peninsula. Any of these locations, we're looking at the potential also because of the front and the way the winds turn quickly with height. There could be low-level wind shear and also the potential for isolated severe turbulence around the Katmai-Shelikof Strait region up into Lower Cook Inlet, areas higher terrain around Kodiak Island, and then also back here toward the eastern Aleutians coming up into the Alaska Peninsula. There could also be that potential for some severe turbulence on Tuesday.